Wants to sign up to a HYROX later this year or is curious on what's the hardest exercise and what's the easiest, I'm going to go over what I personally found was the most challenging, what was the most easiest based on what I did for my first HYROX. So there's me. That's me. Very nice. Now, obviously, this is subjective and it varies from person to person, so you do not have to agree with my opinion. It's just what I found I struggled the most on, ones that I probably weren't so difficult. They were all challenging enough, but some of them I was more naturally suitable to, or I just done for years in my training, so it really just depends on who you are and what you train. Now, at the bottom of the list, I've got the rowing, and despite my face on this, it actually wasn't the most challenging exercise of all time. You can really relatively pace yourself on this one, and you can still get a pretty decent time. So, I didn't really struggle too much on the day with this one. I think I was more just worn out from the running and the rest of the exercise before that. So that's why it's not that high up this list. However, this next one up, though, I do think is going to be a lot higher up on people's lists. But for me, I've been doing this for years. I've been doing this every single leg day on with the sandbag on heavier weights, which I recommend you do if you're training for HYROX. By the way, you go on a heavier weight, so then these weights here don't feel as hard to do. But this one I did not struggle on at all. I love lunges. Lunges are great, so it's not high up this list for me, but it is a difficult exercise. Let me tell you that. It's a very difficult exercise. And that's more or less the same with farmer carries as well. I've been doing this for the last year or so on my leg days, and I think most people can get away with not really ever really training this, to be honest. All you really got to think in your head the whole time is drop this, I'm a bitch. So this one, I don't think is much of a struggle for people. You can drop it as many times as you like, but just don't move the weights. Fifth, though, is the ski erg. This one for me, where like 4 or 5 months ago, was a real big challenge. I was not good at this. And even now, when I did it on comp day, my form isn't great. And I will be honest, form plays a huge part in this. So I do recommend you practice these a lot. But I don't think these are as hard as the other ones on this list. But form is a huge part of that. That's more or less the same for sled push as well. Unfortunately, this one we don't actually have in my gym. So I never really got to train this properly, and it definitely affected me on comp day. My form isn't the greatest, I'll be in the world, but again, I don't think it's hard as the ones that are up this list. Some people might disagree with me with this, but third place for me is burpees. I am terrible at burpees, and one thing I should have done on comp day is jump further. Jump further, so then you'd have to do less reps, and trust me, it will help you so much. I didn't do that. I did these little sprint, like, slow reps, and it just didn't work. Don't do that, guys. Now, this is probably the only one I actually didn't train, and that was a sled pull, and it definitely affected me. This is so much harder than it looks. It's so much harder. Train this if you can. If you have anything in your gyms or anywhere you can train this, I highly recommend it because it's really difficult. And the worst one for me was definitely wall jumps. This was by far my least favorite. It was at the end of the workout. I clearly was the weakest at this, and my face doesn't show it enough, but I really didn't like this. I feel really bad for this guy as well. He had to wait a century for me to finish this. So yeah, that's my list.